Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Rasabihari Radha. कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद, श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। ब्रजभूमि वृंदावन धाम की जय, श्री मथुरा धाम की जय, नवद्वीप मायापुर धाम की जय, पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। गंगा मैया की जय, यमुना मैया की जय, तुलसी महारानी की जय, भक्ति देवी की जय, समवेत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। निताय गौर प्रमानंदे हरि हरि। All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Today's morning program, morning Bhagavatam class and special memorial program is going to be held in Mandapam Hall. So all the devotees are requested to proceed to Mandapam Hall. Prasadam will be served after the program.
Vandeham Sri Guru श्रीयुता पदकमलं श्रीगुरु वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्ण चैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा
गौर भक्त वृंदा हे बार करुणा करो वैष्णव गोसाई हे बार करुणा करो वैष्णव गोसाई पतित पावन तुम बिनिक हो नाई पतित पावन तुम बिनिक हो नाई কাহারণী কাটে গেলে পাপ দূরে যায় কাহার কাহারণী কাটে গেলে पाप दूरे जाएगा बंद करने का हरे कृष्ण मन दयात प्रभु के कथा पाए मन मन दयाल प्रभु कथा के पाए गंगार परश हाइले पछते पवन गंगार पर गंगार परश हाइले पछते पवन दर्शन पवित्र कर ए तो मार्गो दर्शन पवित्र कर ए तो मार्गो হরিস্থানে অপরাধে তারে হরি নাম হরিস্থান হরিস্থানে অপরাধে তারে হরি নাম হরিস্থানে তোমার স্থানে অপরাধে নাহি পরিত্রাণ তোমার স্থানে অপরাধে ও তোমার স্থানে অপরাধে নাহি পরিত্রাণ তোমার হৃদয়ে সদা গোবিন্দ বিশ্রাম তোমার তোমার হৃদয়ে সদা গোবিন্দ বিশ্রাম তোমার হৃদয়ে গোবিন্দ গয়ে নাম বৈষ্ণব প্রাণ গোবিন্দ কহে নাম বৈষ্ণব পরায়ণ প্রতি জন্মে করি আশা চরণের ধুলে প্রতি জন্মে করি আশা চরণের ধুলে প্রতি জন্মে নারদম দয়া কর আপনার বলে নারদম কর দয়া জয় বৈষ্ণব ঠাকুর জয় বৈষ্ণব ঠাকুর বৈষ্ণব ঠাকুর জয় বৈষ্ণব ঠাকুর জয় বৈষ্ণব ঠাকুর জয় বৈষ্ণব ঠাকুর বৈষ্ণব ঠাকুর জয় বৈষ্ণব ঠাকুর নিতাই গৌর হরি বল হরি বল হরি বল নিতাই গৌর হরি বল হরি বল নিতাই গৌর হরি বল।
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Are you able to hear Maharaj? Your sound?
Yes. Oh, now I'm not hearing you.
Maharaj, we are not able to hear you. You are unmuted, Maharaj, from your side.
Yes, I'm unmuted.
Okay. Sound, Maharaj, sound.
Haribol.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, can you speak?
Sorry?
We are not able to hear you clearly, Maharaj. Maybe there is something from our side we have to adjust. Just we are doing it, Maharaj.
Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, can you speak, Maharaj?
Yes, Hare
Ah,
Krishna.
yes, Maharaj. We go. On behalf of devotees of Sri Radha Rasabihari ji, we welcome His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaj. His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaj ki. First of all, we would like to thank His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaj to have agreed to give his association to us with a very short notice. This month, March, is very special. 2022 is very special for all of us because in 1972 March, there were several events that has happened, which is very, very important for us to celebrate. It is in the month of March that devotees actually moved in to Hare Krishna land because the agreement to buy this land was 14 lakh rupees, out of which when first 50,000 is to be given, there should be agreement signed, and the next 50,000 rupees we are supposed to move in, devotees can move in. And after the 1 lakh is over, after another lakh is paid, Mr. Nair was supposed to execute the conveyance. So this 1 lakh payment for this land was made in March 1972, and the devotees moved in. And the second fortnight of March is more important because Prabhupada instructed the devotees, as soon as this 1 lakh payment is made, not only devotees to move in, even you move the deities. Sri Radha Rasabihari ji also moved in the second fortnight of March 1972, which is very, very important for us. Sri Radha Rasabihari ji ki. Sri Radha Rasabihari ji came to this Hare Krishna land on a taxi, seated on the laps of the devotees, and they entered this Hare Krishna land. And Srila Prabhupada, who was not in Mumbai at the time, immediately came also. And another most important event is Prabhupada immediately wanted to lay the cornerstone for a grand temple. That happened on the 22nd of March, 1972. Tomorrow. In fact, since Maharaj was not available tomorrow, so we are having the program today. And this is an important event for us, cornerstone laying. And then also, during this time, His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaj was called by Srila Prabhupada to come to Mumbai, Bombay, and take charge of the Bombay project, which Prabhupada considered very, very important. And His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaj was appointed by Srila Prabhupada himself as the temple president of ISKCON Bombay. His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaj ki, Srila Prabhupada ki. So it is also the Golden Jubilee, 50th anniversary is Golden Jubilee from the British way of doing things. Golden Jubilee of appointing His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaj as the temple president here. And also, it is the same time, during this time, Srila Prabhupada came and Radha Rasabihari was in the temporary pandal structure, and also Srila Prabhupada promised to Sri Radha Rasabihari that, please stay here. I will build you a temple. This promise that Srila Prabhupada made. This is also 50th anniversary, it's a golden jubilee, and from where the Juhu story unfolded. And this is also the 50th anniversary with all these important events that happened in 1972 March. We are assembled here to celebrate it, and also we hear from His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaj the wonderful activities that happened, the pastimes, and we are very, very thankful to you once again, Maharaj, for having agreed to come on the Zoom and give your association. So with that, I request also towards the end, we also, another important event is today, after Maharaj speaks, and towards the end, Maharaj will also speak about His Grace Niranjan Prabhu. Niranjan Prabhu is one of the Prabhupada's disciples and who had served in Hare Krishna land, especially in the BBT. So we will be having a memorial program also. His Grace Niranjan Prabhu passed away on the 15th of March in Vrindavan. In fact, he passed away in the Bhaktivedanta auspice, which His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaj has established. So there is a good connection there. And we will also, towards the end, we will also have the memorial program in which His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj will join, and His Grace Bhima Prabhu, His Grace Dadibakshi Prabhu, His Grace Devakinandan Prabhu, and His Grace Brajari Prabhu also will speak about him, and we will remember his services to Srila Prabhupada, a loyal servant of Srila Prabhupada. So with that, I request His Holiness Giriraj Maharaj to give a class and take the floor. His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaj.
I will begin. Well, yes, thank you for that nice introduction. And I will begin by singing the Mangalacharana prayers and leading a short kirtan. And then I will speak about these important events that took place 50 years ago in March. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamsa Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vikam Sam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Shah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Bhakta-vrinda Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama,
Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Guru Deva, Srila Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Guru Deva, Srila Jayom Vishnupad Paramahansa Pariprajakacharya Stotra Satasri Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayom Vishnupad Paramahansa Pariprajakacharya Stotra Satasri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Hare Das Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Samveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. All glory is to the assembled devotees. All glory is to the assembled devotees. All glory is to the assembled devotees. All glory is to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glory is to Srila Prabhupada. So, my dear devotees on Zoom, as far as possible, I request you to put on your cameras so we can see your moon-like faces and it will be more personal. As His Grace Mukunda Madhava rightly said, from between March 17th and 31st, 2 weeks, 3 significant events in the history of Hare Krishna land took place. The devotees brought Sri Sri Radha Rasabihari from the Akash Ganga building to a pandal on Hare Krishna land. Srila Prabhupada did the Cornerstone laying ceremony for the new temple, and he appointed me as the president of ISKCON Bombay. To begin, I will speak about the deities coming to Hare Krishna land. The large white marble deities of Sri Sri Radha Rasabihari were ordered from Jaipur and paid for by a donation from Seth R.D. Birla. They had first been worshipped at Chowpatty Beach on the last night of the 1971 Bombay Pandal program at Cross Maidan. And then they were being worshipped in our temple in the Akash Ganga building on Warden Road, which was later named Bulabai Desai Road. While the deities were at the Akash Ganga building, a Dutch man named Hans, who was later initiated by Srila Prabhupada as Saurabh Das, and who became the architect for the Juhu temple, happened to visit Akash Ganga the day before the deities were to be taken to Juhu. Shamsundar Prabhu approached the young man and said, "It's great that you came today. This is our last day in Akash Ganga. We are all going to Juhu tomorrow. We have some land and it has a well and it's near the beach. There's a pandal there and Prabhupada will be speaking. Would you like to come with us? We're all going by taxi." "Well, I have nowhere else to sleep tonight," the man said. He was a Dutch architect and had been wandering around Bombay for over a week looking for a Radha Krishna temple. He had seen devotees in Amsterdam and had come to India to see if their worship had its roots in India or was just a Western movement. The next day, Hans accompanied the devotees as they piled into 3 taxis and rode to Juhu. 3 devotees sat in the back seat of each taxi. In one, with the marble deity of Radharani laying across their laps, and in one of the others with the deity of Srimati Radharani. Hans was surprised when on their arrival in Juhu, Shamsundar asked if he would pay for all 3 taxis. But he did. The pandal was decorated with flowers and featured a large stage with a Vyasasan for Srila Prabhupada. As the devotees prepared for Prabhupada's talk, Hans just stood around in the back, not knowing how to act or what to do. Then Shamsundar came up to him and said, "We forgot our tape recorder. Do you have one?" "I do," he replied. "Can you record Prabhupada's lecture?" "Yes, sure." "Great. Just take the little microphone and stick it on the big microphone and sit next to the Vyasasan. And when the tape finishes, turn it around." While Hans was attaching the microphone, Prabhupada walked in and sat on the Vyasasan. He looked at the long-haired young man and gestured to a devotee as if to say, "Who is he?" But then, apparently satisfied, he began to speak. Hans recorded the lecture and gave the cassette to Shamsundar. Meanwhile, I had been on the other side of India. I had done a preaching program in Madras, and then I went to Mayapur for the first Gaur Purnima festival in late February 1972. Mayapur then was mainly rice paddies with a few temples along the single-lane main road. Prabhupada was living in a simple straw hut near the main entrance to our property. And beyond that stood a pandal where the festival and ceremonies would take place. That hut is still there, and Prabhupada's room had a cement floor covered with straw mats. When I entered, he was clearly in a grave mood. In a choked voice, with tears in his eyes, he said, "Krishna is giving us everything now. Everything is the mercy of Krishna." He called me to his room again later that day. After offering my obeisances, I sat at his feet. And he explained that when the British were ruling India, they divided the country into 3 provinces, Bombay, Madras, and Calcutta, each ruled by one governor. Prabhupada had never spoken to me about Indian politics or history, and I didn't know where this was all going, but I was fascinated, spellbound, and hung on every word to find out where he was heading. Then Prabhupada said, "Which do you want?" Prabhupada's question left me speechless. I had never made an independent decision about my service. I told him that I would do whatever he wanted, but he did not accept my answer. He wanted me to decide. So I asked if I could have time to think about it, and he agreed. I thought and thought, but just couldn't decide. The preaching in Calcutta was good, but Madras also had potential. And I already knew people in both places. Then again, Bombay was the biggest field. Actually, all I really wanted to do was to please Srila Prabhupada. But how? After a few days, Prabhupada drove from Mayapur to the Calcutta temple, and the rest of us followed by bus and train. Once there, I felt that my main service, my main assignment, was to determine where I should serve. Whenever I could, I would stand before the beautiful deities of Shri Shri Radha Govinda and chant and pray to them for guidance. I soon realized that Prabhupada was forcing me to come to a higher level of Krishna consciousness. As he sometimes explained, there are three classes of disciples. The third class receives an instruction from the spiritual master and then forgets it, or neglects to act upon it, or argues. The second class disciple receives an instruction from the spiritual master and executes it perfectly. And the first class disciple knows what the spiritual master wants and does it even without being told. To obey the order of the spiritual master requires some basic submission. But to know the desire of the spiritual master without being told requires much more spiritual advancement. I was being compelled to become sincere enough and pure enough to hear the Guru in the heart. But although I thought and prayed, no answer came. Where did Prabhupada want me to serve? Not knowing what else to do, I devised a plan to get Prabhupada to reveal his desire. So one day, sitting before him in his room, I ventured that I had decided to go to Bombay. Prabhupada's response was non-committal. That's all right. His face was inscrutable. But then again, the preaching potential in Madras is very good, I continued, hoping that either by word or gesture or spatial expression, he would indicate his approval or disapproval. Once more, he simply replied, that's all right. But then again, I said I was thinking of staying in Calcutta. That's all right. How could I trick Srila Prabhupada? I felt so ashamed trying to cheat my spiritual master. But I also felt exhilarated that my spiritual master was so great and perfect that he could not be fooled. When, after 5 days in Calcutta, Prabhupada left for Vrindavan and Bombay, I continued to ponder my situation. If I go back to Madras, I considered, I can preach on my own. But if I stay in Calcutta, I can help teach others to preach also. So that was better. So I crossed Madras off the list. Finally, after many days of thought and prayer, the answer came. I should go to Bombay. The most important program in India was life membership. Srila Prabhupada had written, if you all get me at least 2 life members daily, I shall do the rest. And he was pleased that I was making so many life members. But many members were up in arms against us because we had not given them everything we had promised. I reasoned, we were making life members, but were we taking care of them? If we took nice care of them, they would be so pleased that they themselves would make more members. But if we neglected, they would feel cheated and speak ill of us. Then, even when we ourselves approached people, they would not agree. I felt that I should go to Bombay and organize the life membership program on an all India basis. I wrote Prabhupada my conclusion. Bombay had the most life members and was our head office. I should come and, if required, take care of the life members and attend to other affairs related to the head office. Prabhupada seemed pleased. I am very glad to inform you that today we have laid down the cornerstone for our Bombay center here in Juhu. So this is the exact day when Srila Prabhupada laid the cornerstone that he replied to my proposal that I come to Bombay. So yes, I'm very glad to inform you that today we have laid down the cornerstone for a Bombay center here in Juhu. And the ceremony was very wonderful, with many important people attending. I'm very much glad that you are doing so nicely in Calcutta by making many life members daily. So now I think you should join me in Bombay immediately as soon as you are free, after training up a competent replacement there. The program now in India is an immense task, so I'm very much encouraged that you feel yourself enthusiastic to help me in this way. So please come here at the earliest possible, at the latest by the 27th March, 1972. Bhavananda arranged for my ticket, and within a couple of days, I reached Bombay. I rode from the train station with eager anticipation, but the suburb of Juhu seemed far away. Suddenly, we came to a green, lush expanse of land dotted with coconut palms and other trees. Toward the front of the property was a large, festive pandal decorated with blue and white trim, with a stage holding a set of deities facing away from the street. And in the back, beyond the open land, was a cluster of two-story apartment buildings. As much as I was looking forward to meeting all the devotees and getting settled, I wanted to see Srila Prabhupada as soon as possible. I was told that he was staying with Mr. Padmanabhacharya on the ground floor of one of the buildings at the back of the property. The devotees were living in tents, and I put my trunk and other things into one and went to see my spiritual master. When Prabhupada saw me, he opened his eyes wide, smiled broadly, and set everything else aside. He was excited about the whole Juhu project, and wanting me to see the property, he stood up and personally escorted me around, walking next to me but leading the way. He pointed out all the coconut palms, there were 140 of them, and told me how desirable the location was, being so close to Juhu Beach. Even after seeing everything, however, I still couldn't quite visualize what the place would become. But Prabhupada said, one day this property, this land with the building, will be worth 1 crore of rupees. In those days, 1 crore, 10 million rupees, was unimaginable for us. All we had in the bank were a few thousand, at most 2 or 3 lakhs. And that was the result of 1.5 years of work. Returning from a walk with Prabhupada and a small group of devotees one morning, Madhavisa pointed to the property and exclaimed, "Oh, Srila Prabhupada, they have Disneyland, so we should call this Hare Krishna land." And that is how the Juhu property got its name, Hare Krishna land. Like the famous American theme park, we too had a major center of attraction. But instead of the central figure being a cartoon character, it would be Krishna, the chanting of Hare Krishna. Prabhupada had asked me to come and assist Madhavisa, but when I arrived, I heard that Madhavisa was not doing well. He was sleeping late, going to the beach, and generally not performing his duties as temple president. Finally, Prabhupada concluded that Australia would be a good field for him. He would have more opportunity to perform Sankirtan there, and Prabhupada expected he would regain his enthusiasm. With Brahmananda soon returning to Africa and Madhavisa proceeding to Australia, Prabhupada had to find someone to fill the position. He called a meeting with his most senior disciples. I was present, but more, I thought, as an observer. I was not among the most senior or important devotees, and I never had a say in such matters. To begin, Prabhupada raised the question, so who will take charge? No one said a word. The atmosphere was charged with anxious uncertainty. From behind his low table, Prabhupada looked up at the group and then directly at me. So, Giriraj, he said, you will take charge? I was stunned, silent. I didn't know what to say. This was not at all what I had been expecting. In fact, it was the last thing I could have imagined. I had come to Bombay to preach and develop the Life Membership Program, and had neither the inclination nor any special ability to manage. This project was on a whole other level, and the responsibility seemed too much to me. Still, I knew that obeying and pleasing the spiritual master was the secret of success in Krishna consciousness. So somehow I managed to stammer, well, Srila Prabhupada, if you want me to, I will. I didn't feel comfortable with the idea, but I couldn't refuse Prabhupada. Yes, he exclaimed with a bright smile. 1 or 2 days later, I went into Prabhupada's room and sat down in front of his desk. So now, Giriraj, he began, the whole responsibility is on you. I winced, and he chuckled. I couldn't understand why Prabhupada was laughing. Didn't he know how I felt? He seemed to be rubbing it in. I rarely had such thoughts about the spiritual master. Why am I thinking like this? I asked myself. But I was also wondering, how could Prabhupada be so insensitive? I'm reluctant to take this responsibility, and he's rubbing it in by saying, now it's all on you. And on top of it, he's laughing. At the same time, I understood that the spiritual master could discern what was best for his disciple. And based on all my experience with Prabhupada, I knew that he must have foreseen that my taking responsibility for the project would be good for me, even though that was hard for me to imagine. I just had to surrender. I had heard that whenever the spiritual master gave an order, he also gave the potency to execute it. And I knew that for the project to be successful, Prabhupada would have to empower me to act on his behalf. From Bombay, Srila Prabhupada was going to Australia. Before leaving for the airport, he paid his obeisances to Sri Radha and Krishna and stood before them for some time. Actually, they got the name Radha Rasabihari later, so that's why I'm referring to them as Radha and Krishna. Then he walked out to the car, and I opened the door for him. I got into the back seat next to Prabhupada, and devotees crammed into the front seat with the driver. The rest of the devotees rushed to catch rides with life members, who followed behind. At the airport, Prabhupada was given a VIP room, and we all crowded at his feet, eager for a last darshan before he departed. Accompanied by the ringing of kartals and rhythmic thumping of mridanga, Madhavisa led an ecstatic kirtan, and the rest of us rose, held our arms in the air, and danced with abandon, jumping wildly up and down. The outside world ceased to exist. If you go on having kirtans like this, Prabhupada said when we ended, our Bombay project will be a success. When the time came to board the plane, Prabhupada stood up and distributed the garlands hanging around his neck. He offered our obeisances at his lotus feet, and with passport, boarding pass, and immigration form in one hand, and his white plastic case in the other, he walked toward the passport control booth. We followed him as far as we could and then watched his saffron-clad golden form disappear from sight. He again offered our obeisances, then stood paralyzed, as if the world had come to an end, until we could pull ourselves together and walk away. How, I wondered, would we manage in Juhu without Prabhupada there with us? His words, if you go on having kirtans like this, our Bombay project will be a success, were encouraging. And I knew he would be present by his spiritual potency and instructions. But we had also depended on his personal presence. The gravity of the situation and the weight of the responsibility felt overwhelming. Back in Juhu, I offered my obeisances in front of the deities. More than ever, I felt dependent on their mercy. Not knowing what to do next, I sat down before them and prayed for guidance, for the ability to help fulfill Srila Prabhupada's vision of a beautiful marble temple for them and a Krishna conscious training center for devotees and others. Reflecting on how enthusiastic Prabhupada was about the Bombay project, I took heart. Even though we were neither experienced nor qualified, his pure desire would surely prevail. So, my dear devotees, these are my remembrances and accounts and reflections on these significant events that took place 50 years ago. the arrival of Shri Radha Rasabihari in Juhu, the laying of the cornerstone for the new temple on March 22nd, 1972, and Srila Prabhupada's appointing me as temple president in Juhu. So thank you for joining us on this auspicious occasion. And now, if any of you have any comments or questions or reflections, you can raise your hand, your physical hand or your virtual hand, and speak. Hare Krishna.
His Grace Devakinandan Prabhu would like to ask a question to you, Maharaj.
All right.
Jai Maharaj, please apply Abhisansak Dr. Srila Prabhupada. When did Prabhupada give the name Radha Rasabihari? You said he gave, Radha Krishna, he Abhisansak Radha Krishna.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I can answer it. Actually, I brought up the question of the name for the deities. And I will relate that incident. This took place in 1974. Although our deities had been in Juhu for more than 2 years, they did not yet have specific names. One day I mentioned this to a few devotees, and they encouraged me to bring up the topic with Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada, I requested, can you name our deities? Yes, he replied. What about Radha Madan Mohan? Srila Prabhupada, the deities in Hyderabad are already called Madan Mohan. Then what about Radha Govinda? Srila Prabhupada, the deities in New York are called Radha Govinda. Prabhupada paused thoughtfully, considering. What about Radha Rasabihari? Is that all right? Yes, Srila Prabhupada. And smiling in bliss, I paid my obeisances and left. Later, as I was going back over the exchange in my mind, I thought about how in Vrindavan, the 3 principal deities were Madan Mohan, Govinda, and Gopinath, corresponding to Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. And in our discussion, he had gone from Madan Mohan to Govinda to Rasabihari, the enjoyer of the rasa dance, Prayojana, the goal. So thank you for asking that question.
Was there any, I think we didn't have, Gopinath temple that time. So was there anything that Prabhupada just chose Radha Rasabihari, or he suggested, why not Radha Gopinath? I'm just curious. Question, Madan Mohan, Govinda, and why not Gopinath?
I don't think I can answer for Srila Prabhupada. Why not Gopinath? In my mind, when I was going over the discussion, I was relating it to that progression from, Madan Mohan to Govinda to Gopinath. But in our conversation, he went from Madan Mohan to Govinda to Rasabihari.
All right. Okay, thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I wanted to ask a question. You mentioned in your book that there are first cornerstone laying and second cornerstone laying and third cornerstone laying, like that. And also we have pictures of Prabhupada actually doing the cornerstone laying, in which, it's already mentioned Radha Rasabihari. So which picture is that, and when actually this cornerstone was, the stone which we are seeing, just we also saw on the screen. So when was that actually made and laid down?
Yeah, well, yes, the original was in 1972, But then when the whole project was stalled because of so many complications, and then we got permission, Srila Prabhupada wanted to have another cornerstone laying ceremony to signify that we had overcome those challenges and now we're actually ready to begin construction. And there's nice pictures of that cornerstone ceremony. Mr. Seti is there. So many of the early devotees, I'm there. So that was the reasoning behind having that second cornerstone ceremony. And that was on Ram Nomi. Actually there were three. The second cornerstone laying was on Ram Nomi in 1974. And the third was on January 23rd, 1975. That was the picture I was referring to that had Mr. Seti in it, in a very happy mood. So, yeah, there are actually three cornerstone ceremonies.
When did the project started, like building, a real building construction?
Yeah, let me just add one thing about the third one. The reason Srila Prabhupada had the third one on January 23rd is the day before, on January 22nd, Mr. Seti got permission from the Bombay Municipal Corporation to build the temple complex, except for the temple itself, which required a no objection certificate from the police. That was another story. But because he got the permission on January 22nd, the next day, January 23rd, Srila Prabhupada laid the cornerstone again and left. Yeah. So what were you saying? What were you asking?
As when did the actual construction began?
Oh, yeah. It began in 75. On August 26, 1975, we got the permission from the Bombay Municipal Corporation for the temple, as well as the complex. And we started. But things really got going when we hired Larson and Toubro's Engineering, Construction, and Contracts Division, ECC, to take up the construction. And that was January 3rd, 1976. But we began in a less efficient way before then, in 1975.
Not bad. So in 3-year time.
Yeah. I mean, we had a friend, Mr. G.L. Raheja, who was a builder. And, Srila Prabhupada was always pushing us to finish quickly. And he asked Mr. Raheja if he thought that it could be built in 6 months. And Mr. Raheja said yes. I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe didn't want to disagree with Srila Prabhupada, but he said yes. But still, as you said, I mean, everyone agreed that it really came up fast. In whatever, 2.5 years, that was like really fast for such a huge project and elaborate project. Yes.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Who would like to ask? Brajari Prabhu would like to ask a question.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. I want to ask you, when and where Srila Prabhupada prayed to Sri Radha Rasabihari that I will build please stand here and I will build a nice marble temple for you. Where it is, where is prayed actually?
Where did he pray?
I mean, say when and where?
Oh, I think it was from the beginning. From the beginning, when Radha Rasabihari came to Juhu. Yeah, because it wasn't, we didn't really have a nice place in which to receive them. I mean, they came first to the Pandal, and then after the Pandal program finished and Srila Prabhupada left for Australia, they took away that Pandal, rented Pandal, fancy Pandal, and Narayan and his wife, with the help of her American sewing machine, put together a very simple Pandal, and that's where the deities moved. And then when the rainy season came, we actually had to move the deities into the Chetai hut with the devotees. But then for Janmashtami 1972, we had constructed that, what we used to call the semi-permanent temple. And then on Janmashtami, we moved the deities into that semi-permanent temple where they remained until January 14th, 1978, when they moved into the marble temple that Srila Prabhupada promised.
There is a question from Prananath Prabhu. What the question? He has raised the hand also. Oh.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, he's asking.
Yes, Guru Maharaj. I had a question regarding the advent of Lalita Vishakha. I wanted to know how it came in the background, how Lalita Vishakha were introduced or how it happened. And when were they actually joined? They joined Radha Rasabihari.
That was my suggestion. And when I suggested it to Srila Prabhupada, his eyes opened wide and he smiled broadly. And he said, very good idea. And I didn't really think it was that brilliant because we already had Lalita and Vishakha with Radha Shamsundar in Vrindavan. But I did suggest it and he really liked the suggestion.
When did they join Radha Rasabihari?
In the new temple.
Thank you.
Parijat Mataji.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, my humble obeisances. Thank you so much. My question was that, from the very beginning, since the time Shri Radha Rasabihari appeared on Hare Krishna land, it's always been about challenges, trials, tribulations, and I think maybe that's the mood of their lordships. And you, just so graciously, survived, sustained all this. So what was your, whenever you and the devotees had this, challenges and difficulties throughout the years, over the decades, what was the mood of your prayers and, just meditation on Shri Shri Radha Rasabihari, which you think would actually helped you?
Well, I would say I was meditating more on Srila Prabhupada and his desire and his instructions. And yes, there were some very difficult times, but Srila Prabhupada always remained fixed in his determination to overcome the obstacles and build Sri Shri Radha Rasabihari, the temple that he promised them. And we were motivated by his desire and instructions. And sometimes, at one stage he sent reinforcements to help me because the opposition was so formidable. So he sent Tamal Krishna and Shamsundar and even Karandar. And they all concluded that our case was very weak. And they wrote Srila Prabhupada, and he wrote back, "You say our case is weak, but I say our case is strong." And then he gave all the reasons why our case was strong. And he was relentless. He was empowered. He was relentless. He just would not be defeated. And he wasn't defeated for Radha Rasabihari. You asked about prayers. I would say that an important part of my service, if you will, was my morning japa. And I got a lot of inspiration and clarity from my morning japa. I considered that a very important spiritual practice to sustain my determination and also empowered me with strength and intelligence to serve Srila Prabhupada's desire.
There is a question from Sitaram Prabhu Maharaj. He's one of the council members of ISKCON Juhu, Mumbai.
Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam. Maharaj, could you please share the discussion if you were involved about installing Sri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman deities? Because we have Jagannath Ji in Jagannath Baladev Subhadra in Hyderabad, and Radha Shyam Sundar in Vrindavan. Could you please share the discussions, how it arrived to install Sri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman Ji here?
Well, a simple answer is that Srila Prabhupada said there are a lot of devotees of Ram in Bombay. And I can quote just a little exchange, but with the construction progressing well, Srila Prabhupada spoke with me about what deities we should install in the new temple. And he said there are many devotees of Ram in Bombay, and he suggested that we have Lord Ramachandra. We discussed different possibilities. Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman, Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman and their associates. Finally, Prabhupada decided Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman. So the first altar was clear, Guru Gauranga, as in Vrindavan. The central also would be Shri Shri Radha Rasabihari. What if we have Lalita and Vishaka with Radha and Krishna? I suggested. And as I mentioned, Prabhupada's eyes widened, his eyebrows raised, and his lips spread in a broad smile. Oh, yes, he said, very good idea. Personally, I didn't think the idea was so exceptional because Prabhupada had already installed Lalita and Vishaka with Sri Sri Radha Samsundar in Vrindavan. But he made a big thing of it, as if it was a stroke of genius or inspiration. In times to come, I would think of its significance, that we approach Radha and Krishna through or with the help of their gopi friends and servants, such as Lalita and Vishaka. 6 weeks later, Saurabh wrote Prabhupada, who was then in Los Angeles, to clarify the standard of worship in the new temple, whether there should be any change or any special arrangement, such as extra bhajans. And Prabhupada replied on June 7th, for worshiping the deities in Bombay, including Sitaram, there is absolutely no change in worship. Adopt the same method as in our Vrindavan center with 3 pujaris, just like in Vrindavan. They are all Vishnu Tattva, Ramachandra, Radha Krishna, Gaurnitai. No additional kirtans. Simply do exactly as in Vrindavan.
Thank you, Maharaj, for no additional kirtan. That is, punching point. No additional kirtan. Maharaj also, Tamal Krishna Maharaj once said, when he was fighting this Prabhupada's son's court case, and he stayed for a long time in Juhu. So he was saying that Prabhupada installed Sitaram Lakshmana Hanuman, and he told us that Sitaram, Lord Ram is a good king. So for management, we should pray to Lord Ramchandra for a good management. And he will kill all the devils like he killed Ravana. So he will kill the demons and he will we will have good management by prayer of Sitaram. Therefore, Prabhupada said, I install Sitaram here. The Tamal Krishna Maharaj told once.
Nice. Excellent. Another aspect. Yeah, we have Sitaram in Washington, D.C. And Srila Prabhupada said Washington, D.C. is the capital of the United States, and Lord Ramchandra is the example of the perfect ruler. So we should have Lord Rama in Washington, D.C.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, there is a brahmachari here, Kaushalya Putra Prabhu. He has a question. He actually told the question in Hindi, so I'm telling you in English. So he's asking, Srila Prabhupada wanted us to read Bhagavad Gita first, then Srimad Bhagavatam, then Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Whereas Prabhupada completed Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, and he completed Bhagavad Gita, then Chaitanya Charitamrita, and then Bhagavatam was not completed also. So he is asking you your opinion on this.
What is the question?
The question is, Prabhupada wanted us to read Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Chaitanya Charitamrita. Whereas Prabhupada completed Bhagavad Gita, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and then Srimad Bhagavatam, not also completed. So he's asking you, how do we understand this?
Yeah. Well, generally, in terms of advancement Just a second. Yeah, generally in terms of advancement, first is Ishopanishad, then Bhagavad Gita, then the Nectar of Devotion, then Srimad Bhagavatam, and then Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. But the fact that generally, Srila Prabhupada wanted us to go to Srimad Bhagavatam before Chaitanya Charitamrita doesn't mean that he had to finish translating Srimad Bhagavatam before he finished translating Chaitanya Charitamrita. Because Chaitanya Charitamrita is a shorter work, and I'm glad that he did it. He finished it. And Srimad Bhagavatam is considerably longer. And he did what he could. He gave us a lot. And then his disciples finished it. So everything is all right. So will you translate that to him in Hindi now or later? Or?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay.
And we would like to continue the program with a memorial for His Grace Niranjan Prabhu. So,
all right.
So I will briefly introduce Niranjan Prabhu. Niranjan Prabhu was a student at Banaras Hindu University. And when he was studying there, he visited Prayagraj for a mela there, and he met Srila Prabhupada. And he presented Prabhupada with a book on the biography of Lord Chaitanya. To Srila Prabhupada, he presented the book, which was given by his father to be presented to Prabhupada. And the Prabhupada also saw the picture of his father, and he said, your father is a devotee, and you also should become a devotee. And he said, what is to be done? He said, why don't you take initiation? He said, oh, I am a student. I cannot shave up. All the devotees are shaved up. He said, no, on the day of initiation, you can shave up, and after that, you can keep hair. And he said, then what about putting tilak? If I put tilak and go to college, people will laugh at me. He said, no, on the day of initiation, you put, and then later on, it's okay. And he was very hesitant. What about Guru Dakshina? He said, Guru Dakshina, one day you beg for the spiritual master. So in this way, though he was hesitant, and he took initiation from Srila Prabhupada on the Nityananda Trayodasi, 1971, almost 51 years back. Initiation he took. And Srila Prabhupada asked him, why don't you arrange a lecture in Banaras Hindu University? And with the influence of some of the faculty members, Niranjan Prabhu arranged a lecture for Srila Prabhupada at the Banaras Hindu University. And in 1972, 50 years ago, Niranjan Prabhu actually translated Guru Ashtakam in Hindi. 1972 is a 50 year. We are celebrating 50th year of his Guru Ashtakam translation also. And Niranjan Prabhu came to Bombay. He was in BBT, serving in BBT in the translation services as a brahmachari. And later on, he entered into Grihastha Ashram and became a faculty in a college in Chitrakoot. And he was based in Chitrakoot, and he kept visiting Vrindavan. And he was specifically here in Mumbai, Bombay, and during the silver jubilee celebrations of ISKCON Bombay. And at the time, he was specifically mentioning, otherwise later also, to make a memorial for Srila Prabhupada and BBT. That was later, 40th anniversary. When he was here for the 40th anniversary, he was also requesting, that was one of his requests. And in January this year, 2022, he was diagnosed with cancer in the stomach, and he was undergoing treatment in the Gurugram. And on the 12th March, just 10 days back, 9-10 days back, he was shifted to Bhaktivedanta Hospice in Vrindavan because he was on the 4th stage of the cancer. And he was staying there in Bhaktivedanta Hospice. On the 15th of March, just 3 days after he arrived there, he actually departed. And his final request was that after his departure, he should be taken for darshan of Srila Prabhupada. So he was a very loyal servant of Srila Prabhupada. And according to the ISKCON Vrindavan management, they have fulfilled his desire of having the darshan of Srila Prabhupada. And with that brief introduction, I request His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaj to speak about His Grace Niranjan Prabhu.
Yeah, I don't think I'll say too much, but I will relate some interaction, if you will, that I had with him at the end when he was in the Bhaktivedanta Hospice in Vrindavan. My disciple Giri Govardhan Das from Mumbai has been serving in the hospice in Vrindavan. He's with us now, smiling. And so he sent me a text message saying, Srila Prabhupada's disciple Niranjan Prabhuji was admitted in our Vrindavan hospice for palliative care, and I have been blessed to get his personal association. I feel blessed to receive this opportunity to serve exalted souls. And then I wrote back, Jai, wonderful. I know Niranjan Prabhu well. He translated Srila Prabhupada's books into Hindi. If you think it appropriate, you can tell him that I have fond memories of him and that he is in my thoughts and prayers. And then Giri Govardhan Prabhu replied, I conveyed your regards and prayers, and he was smiling. Yesterday, on his arrival, I had a lengthy talk with him, during which he was telling me about his encounters with and relationship with Srila Prabhupada. And when he came to know that I am your disciple, he even inquired about you, and he blessed me with both his hands. While I was massaging his head, he told me that I have healing hands and compassionate like my Guru Maharaj. This is the best compliment of my life. Then Niranjan Prabhu finally left his body. So, yeah, it's very sad that he has left us. But as Srila Prabhupada said, when a Vaishnava departs, we feel both happy and sad. We feel happy because we know the devotee has gone to serve Krishna, but we feel sad because we will miss the devotee's association. But it's sad that he's left us, but it's not sad for him because he's definitely with Srila Prabhupada, engaging in devotional service to the Panchatattva and Shri Radha and Krishna and Lalita and Vishaka. Hare Krishna. So, Mukunda Madhava Prabhu,
Yes, Maharaj.
So we're going in, are we going to the memorial program right now, immediately?
Yes, Maharaj, we are continuing, Maharaj.
Okay. Well, I may have to take your leave. Yeah, I mean, it's 9 at night here, which is not so late, but I do have to do some other service. So yeah, I think I'll take your leave. And if I can, I'll join again later, but certainly His Grace Niranjan Prabhu and all of you will be in my thoughts and prayers.
So thank you very much, Maharaj. On behalf of all the devotees here, we express our heartfelt gratitude for agreeing to be part of the celebration today here. We are very, very thankful to you, Maharaj. We thank His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaj by chanting the holy names. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Jai, thank you. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Shri Radha Rasabihari ki jai.
Jai.
Ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
So next we would like, we wanted to speak, His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj joined, but he has again left. So when he joins, we will have him. Now I request, since His Grace Devakinandan Prabhu has to go, I request His Grace Devakinandan Prabhu to speak about Niranjan Prabhu.
बैठ करके खड़ा होकर गुरवे गौरचंद्राय राधिकाय तदालय कृष्णाय कृष्ण भक्ताय तद्भक्ताय नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत शिवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे। हरे कृष्णा। हिंदी और इंग्लिश? तो निरंजन प्रभु से